is one that I've really wanted to do for a long time, which is about depopulation and some of the effects it's going to have on our society. Is something I've been kind of tracking for a while, and I'm really glad that we're finally getting around to doing this.
I thought we were talking about education.
No, that's something I'd like to do in the future.
Oh,
No. We're doing depopulation. This is the demographic episode we talked about last time.
Yeah, the demographics episode.
okay.
Yeah.
My apologies, folks. Are we recording?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So, yes, I don't take back my apology.
So just to throw a couple of numbers at you, South Korea has 1 million abandoned homes. And that South Korea and Japan are often, the most cited as the bleeding edge of depopulation. The figures I've seen for Japan is 800,000 abandoned homes. And the question is, well, they're primarily in rural areas and small towns. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with these things? You can't just leave them to rot and decay because obviously they're an environmental hazard. They're a public hazard. But who is there to take them apart? How do we dismantle them?
Why would you dismantle them?
Because as they rot, they become an environmental hazard, because there are substances and chemicals in modern homes that we don't want in the environment. And they are, again, a safety hazard in that, if someone were to come upon them and, say, enter them for whatever reason, you could easily fall through a floor, injured, have a structure collapse on you, what have you. They're hazards. They're hazards.
Okay, I mean, but in that respect, you can fence them off.
You could, but it doesn't address the environmental concern.
No. So I'm just saying, okay, that's one of the boxes checked off.
Yeah. And again, okay, who's going to make the fence? If we have the town of Podunk in rural Saskatchewan and it just becomes depopulated.
Well, let's get to the nuts and bolts of your question.
Yeah.
Are you looking for a definitive answer, a solution to your
it's just
to your
to kind
question?
of it's just to kind of get the thoughts flowing here. There's way more than just abandoned structures that we have to worry about.
We can't leave them alone.
Nope.
So we have to take them down. I'm saying, okay, you're saying who's going to build a fence around them. I'm going to say who's going to tear them down, because it's easier to put a fence around them.
Yes, it is.
Than it is to tear them down.
Absolutely.
So,
but it's the question applies either way.
Right.
Who is going to do this? Who's going to pay for it?
Well, it's whoever is deciding that it is an unacceptable risk to have these structures still standing, right? So, and therefore something has to be done about it. So,
and then the question
probably
becomes,
going to be government.
Right. Absolutely. It's going to be. I mean, this is who makes those decisions in the absence of any clear,
Well, no one else is going to want to step up,
right?
Or even say, because again, this is one of my arguments that this is what government kind of does.
This is kind of what we have government for.
It's to handle those types of situations.
And let's say the original owner of that property dies without issue, so title is reverted to government. The public owns the structure. But the reason why I bring it up is it's just one aspect of problems that depopulation is going to have, because the ability of government to do things is going to be ever greater constrained as the number of taxpayers declines. When we have a demographic structure that looks like an upside down pyramid, then we have fewer people moving into the tax-paying bracket to sustain the higher number of people who are now the benefactors of the taxpayer. This is a massive problem that we have never, ever had to, we never even forecasted it, let alone had to face it.
Or have a solution.
I mean, so basically, since in the developed world, we'll say, since the baby boomers, right? The greatest generation had the largest generation of what we call the baby boomers.
The baby boomers, yeah.
The baby boomers had fewer kids than their parents, and the baby boomers didn't meet replacement levels of
right.
And then
Children.
every subsequent generation has become smaller and smaller and smaller.
Right.
And in all the developed world, right, most of us are fairly heavily welfare states.
Yep.
And those welfare systems are structured at 3 to 4 workers per dependent.
Right.
And we're quickly approaching 1-to-1, and we will very quickly be at 2 dependent,
Negative. Yeah.
2 dependents, 3 dependents per worker. And it's just
Not sustainable.
it's not sustainable by any stretch of the imagination.
Can we? So, what are the dependencies that we're talking about?
Retired pension, government funded
That's
pension
the
plans.
big one that everyone talks about.
Yeah, old age pension plans is the big one.
Yeah.
Socialized medicine, and then straight up welfare schemes. Right?
And everything
for-
that government does has to be paid for by taxpayers. So the size of our nation, like the number of square kilometers of roads, paved roads that need to be repaired every year, isn't going down.
Well, yeah, not to look at Edmonton for. Jesus,
But the
can't-
number of people who are there to pay for it decreases. And to give an example of like kind of like a laboratory, like an experiment on how this kind of looks, we take the city of Detroit. The city of Detroit experienced constant and consistent population decline, going from I think the 1960s or 1970s
60s,
was their zenith.
Yep.
And then their population steadily declined. Now it wasn't so much through demographics and that people were having fewer children. It was mainly out-migration.
Yep.
But the end effect is the same in that, or like the problem is the same. You have the same amount that has to be, infrastructure that has to be maintained, programs that have to be administered, but fewer and fewer people who are able to do it with this huge burden of the previous generation in the form of pensions and benefits for retired civic employees of the city of Detroit. And the system collapsed. It went into bankruptcy.
I think Detroit was the first example of what we're talking about that
Really
I became
yeah.
conscious of, and I was
Yeah.
like,
Really
and I-
captured the
and
public
I
attention.
think I saw it was either in like video clips or a photo montage,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, if it wasn't actually in National Geographic, it looked like it was from National Geographic. All these buildings,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and streets that were just being overgrown by
They're just abandoned.
nature.
Yep.
And because I remember growing up back in the day, the metropoli at the time were L.A., New York, Chicago,
Yep.
Detroit.
Yeah.
Am I missing one?
Well, maybe Boston, but
No, I don't think Boston was there. I mean, it was.
But yeah, Detroit was one of the
big. I
great
thought there were
cities of
five,
America,
but I thought
yeah.
there were 5. But there's,
Yeah.
you know,
1959, 1960, maybe even 61, Detroit had the highest average income
Yeah.
in the United
like
States.
it was the home of the automobile industry.
well, and unionized workers, right?
Yeah.
So that's
And we often still refer to the automobile industry, the American industry, as Detroit.
as Detroit, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do we say Detroit or do we say Detroit?
I always said Detroit.
Detroit.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. You.
I say Detroit.
Okay. I just noticed that that's a regional variation. I was wondering if anyone here had it.
No.
Detroit.
Nope.
There was I believe there was a Canadian sports broadcaster in Edmonton, sports broadcaster who I believe that's how he used to pronounce it, was Detroit.
Are we talking?
I don't want to get into him, but anyway, he was a figure of many decades on the radio here. I believe that's what he used to say.
Is that Rod Phillips?
No, some other guy, I can't remember. his
Okay.
name. Anyway,
Doesn't matter.
yeah.
So-
Total aside.
Let
But
me
again, Detroit was the first one that really brought this to the public attention.
Yeah.
So here's a question I have, because I've heard the stats you guys have thrown out there, so I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys already think that, but
On other matters.
on this specific subject, because we've been talking about a housing crisis in this country for a decade at least.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's actually coming to a head now. And it's actually hitting the federal radar at the political level, just
Right.
because the Liberals are scrambling to find anything to look good about. So Are we, when we're talking about depopulation, when we're talking about how we've gone from the ratio of needing 4 to 1, is that what I heard?
Yep.
And we're currently at 2 to 1, and soon we're going to be at 1 to 2.
No, we're well, yeah, we're probably at 2. We're not at 1 to 1 yet, but
It's coming.
it's coming. But like there's still right now in Canada more workers than there are dependents, but that gap is narrowing very quickly.
Now, so how's the housing crisis play into this? How is immigration
The housing crisis, well, because the federal government has realized for a long time, and it's been a policy of multiple administrations in this country, that we're not replacing, and so they have been trying to replace population through immigration.
Yes.
And Trudeau has been trying
Immigration is essential. Canada's population is in decline without immigration.
Yeah.
That's been my impression.
Yeah.
So, but what's driving this? Is it absentee landlords that is driving the
Absentee landlords, I think, is really.
I think that depends on the market and the neighborhood within that market.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
I mean,
I think absentee landlords is a Vancouver thing.
GTA? Okay, it's definitely a Vancouver thing.
Yeah, not so much
Totally.
in the GTA. The GTA is more, I think, a problem of
density.
of density and NIMBYism. All those things that make up, because there's no room for any of the metropolises in the GTA to go unless you're Barrie.
Yeah.
Or things like on the north edge, because everybody else is hemmed in by the lake and the border and by the other municipalities.
Okay.
Right. And as long as people have single family homes that their retirement is counting on or whatever, right? They don't want a neighborhood necessarily with 20 that's going to have 25-story apartments.
Yeah.
Right. So there becomes you get this issue of you can't build because of the legacy properties and legacy property owners, and until these property owners either die off and there's not enough people to buy their houses, so that now you end up with abandoned properties, and now maybe you can take these properties and. But even here in Edmonton, like one of the things that we do here in Edmonton to ameliorate it is like in older neighborhoods. Like my friend she was living in Bonnie Doon, and you just walk around the neighborhood she was in. That one of the things we're doing here, which I think is a good thing, even though I don't really like the houses as a result of it, is they do infills, right? But they knock down, these are larger legacy properties, because like mine is, and they knock the house down and they build 2. Because now the building codes are, used to be, because when this house was built, like this house was built in the early 1960s, the code was that the house couldn't occupy, I think, more than like a third of the property or something like that. It might even be less. And now it's the house can't occupy more than 2/3 of the property or something like that, right? So,
well, I mean, there's actually a lot of infills going into our neighborhood, the West End.
I think out east, like it's already they were constrained and they had much smaller properties, like in the GTA to begin with. So, infilling the way we're doing it here isn't really a thing they can do there.
Yeah,
I don't think.
So. I just wonder how that played into it, because to me, that's got to at least speak to some amount of population increase.
Yeah.
In Canada, yes, but it's dependent, number one, 2 problems. It's dependent upon immigration. And Canada's specific system of immigration does cause problems in that you can't walk here. Our immigrants tend to be older. They tend to be in their 30s when they arrive. So we have missed those primary consumption years, say 20 to 30. We don't get those earning years and consumption years of those immigrants. So they have less time in the workforce. The other thing is that over 50% of Canada's immigrants are not actually immigrants. They're on the family reunification program. So what's very common is that the one immigrant arrives under the points program, but he'll bring his dependent spouse and
Parents.
4 people or both sets of dependent parents. Who never really contribute anything into the system. So we get one taxpayer and earner, but we only get them, say, for about 75% of their earning life. And of course, they're starting from the bottom. So like they're not coming here for the most part and stepping in $110,000 jobs. They're coming in, working in the service industry, earning, say, less than $40,000 a year. So what they actually pay in taxes after their basic exemption is less than what they're consuming in services as an individual, let alone when they bring dependents with them.
Right.
Now, what we're counting on is that he's got, and I say he because our average immigrant is male, or the majority of our immigrants, like our points immigrants, are male. What we're counting on is that this guy is going to have more than 2.3 children. 2.3 being the replacement fertility rate. Is every woman has two. If the average woman has 2.3 children, our population stays the same. As soon as you go to 2.2, your population begins to drop. You go to 2.4, your population begins to climb. We're hoping that that guy is bringing more than 2.3 children with him, or is going to have them, and then they will become the higher income earning taxpayers, that they're going to have the benefit of a full Canadian education. They are going to be able to step into jobs that pay more than, say, beneath or within 10% of the basic personal exemption, that they're going to be $60,000 and up income earners. So we're playing a long game. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, it's been what we've been running on. The problem is that everywhere in the world is facing a decline in fertility. And this is really going to affect Canada because our primary sources of immigrants are Asia and South Asia. Asia's population is in free fall. South Korea and Japan have the lowest fertility rates in the world. We suspect China is within 1/10 of a point in line with them, or worse. But we can't really tell because Chinese statistics are notoriously unreliable in this regard. But we do know that China's population is also in a free fall. And Canada disproportionately draws immigrants from China. The other countries where we disproportionately draw immigrants is India and Pakistan, like the India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, the whole South Asian kind of Indian subcontinent. They are also experience declining population. Like their population numbers aren't dropping yet, but their rate of increase is drastically falling. And within the next generation, by 2050, they will also be in decline. This is what makes the problem so scary, is we cannot import people our way out of it. We cannot use the third world as this people factory, which we thought, which kind of what especially Europe has been doing for the past 25 years to keep their population stable. We'll import people. The places that you went to get these people from are also experiencing declines in their fertility rates.
Oh, isn't that a bit of a sliding scale? I mean, up until the 70s, the infant mortality rates in the third world were contributing to the overpopulation. So that people were having lots of children because they knew that. Yeah. It was just
for a variety of reasons.
It was built in that
they had a variety of reasons.
Half of them might die, right? So as those infant mortality rates have gone down, people haven't had to have it. Like that whole thinking has gone away. So I mean,
as their standard of living has increased, for example, Niger has the highest at something like 6.23 births per woman.
Okay.
I think they're one of the highest in the world. But again, it is declining. As the standard of living has grown across the planet, especially for the people at the greatest single increases have been at the bottom of the income scale. Okay. The most improvement has come for the people who were at the very bottom, as their standard of living has increased globally over the past 40, 50 years. Their need for large families has declined.
Okay, so Trent's jumping ahead in his head.
Okay.
About 12 steps in this conversation.
Yeah.
He's thrown on his tinfoil hat, and He's sensing the conspiracy from around the table here from the right.
This is not a conspiracy episode. This is
No,
a
hang on.
non-political
No,
episode.
he's thinking we're using this in some other way.
Hang on. So where this is going, the logic is going to be, we've got a big problem here. The only solution is to dismantle the welfare state. That's where I hear this going.
No. However,
I
think it's going to be on the table.
I think as a side effect, the welfare state is going to dismantle itself just because
might.
it's
It might.
it's not going to be.
We have to start getting realistic about our expectations.
It's just
Yeah.
not. You just
Yeah.
can't pay for it.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to buy the debt that you would need to run the thing.
Like, for
So-
example, one of the points that I didn't think we get here this early in the conversation, but look at the massive, and this ties back to Detroit, the massive bureaucracy we've built around Veterans Affairs to service the Second World War generation.
Mm-hmm.
That generation is gone. There's perhaps less than 100 World War II veterans left alive.
Yeah, there's not many.
Okay.
in Canada or the
Yeah, in
world?
Canada. In Canada. Just
okay.
Canada. Yeah. So I believe we are down to, I think, the low three figures. We might even be down to two figures. But we have not reduced the size of that bureaucracy
Well,
at all.
okay, so
Now,
numbers wise, so
yeah.
let's compare the Afghan mission
Yep.
to the Second War,
Yep.
right? I imagine. I mean, the numbers have to be a lot fewer.
Way fewer.
Yeah, we didn't mobilize nearly as many
Ridiculously
people
few.
for
Like, how many- we-
3 or 4 orders
Yeah.
of magnitude. I
Oh,
would
yeah.
think. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So just
Yeah, like certainly, probably less than 50,000 for the entire Afghan
I think
mission,
it was
right?
10,000, wasn't it?
It could be, yeah. But
so there is an argument there. So we could call Veterans Affairs.
We could, 100%.
Yeah.
But saying it is a damn sight easier than doing it. Do you think PSAC is going to sit back and say, yeah, we voluntarily cull our membership? And this is what brought Detroit down. Everybody saw what was happening. They saw it for 30 years in advance, that the size of the public sector in Detroit was not sustainable. But removing, sorry, man, you've got a lot of people who they're making a damn good living on this, and you're asking them to forego their careers. You're asking them to forego like I'm trying to be devil's
Okay,
advocate.
yeah, I get it.
You're
So-
asking them to forego the way they pay their mortgage, and they're not going to do that willingly. And this is what happened in the Greek collapse of, I believe it was 2007, 2008,
Yeah.
when the Greek state collapsed. It was the same thing. Their tax base, and again, the Greek population is in free fall, and this contributed to it. They did not have enough. They built a welfare state bureaucracy based on their population in the 1950s. And their 21st century population could not sustain it, but dismantling that bureaucracy, that massive public sector, has proven impossible everywhere in the world where it has been necessary.
I remember hearing, and I don't have any sources to quote on this, but back at the time, one of the elements that played into that is that it was an element of Greek culture that people were notorious for
Tax
not
evasion.
paying
Yes.
their taxes.
Yes.
Right. So that was a massive, when a significant portion
Yes.
of your population is going out of its way to not
However,
pay taxes, that's also going to be
their
part of the
taxes
problem.
were also over 50%.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and this is something that is again, economists have known this, that you can flex a few points here and there depending on what society you're in, but broadly speaking, as soon as you the rough rule is 47%, give or take 1 or 2%. Like some places it'll be 45, some places it'll be 49, whatever. But broadly speaking, use 47% as your rule of thumb. As soon as the average taxpayer is foregoing or has to lose 47% of their income in total taxes across all levels of government, it costs you more than $1, or every dollar you raise in additional taxes costs you more than $1 in increased enforcement. So it's actually, you're going to, every tax increase is actually going to
Be a net loss.
Be a net loss. It's going to exacerbate your deficits.
That's assuming they're enforcing everything anyways. Like,
Well, assuming
Like-
you can. But again, that's the problem. Some forms of revenue depend on the good or how would you say, the good faith of the taxpayer, and that if you were to enforce that instead of voluntary compliance,
I get what you're
if
saying.
you had to use coercion, it's going to cost more than what that tax brings in.
I get what you're saying. And so, speaking as the leftist at the table, like, for the longest time, I didn't have a problem paying my taxes. But I've had two problems come up since then.
Yeah.
We've talked about the service concept, right? Treat me well.
Right.
Because I've gone out of my way to pay my taxes all this time.
Right.
Don't behave like a bureaucrat to me when
Yeah.
and fucking shit on me.
Yeah.
Right?
Say when I
I
go to receive government services, don't nickel and dime me or
not
treat me
just that.
like I'm some kind of scammer.
Or not just, don't treat me as the default I'm expected to be a criminal when you're dealing with me about my taxes, right? Because I've been paying them all my life,
Right.
and I've been doing it
in other words,
without
don't
complaining.
automatically assume that
Yeah.
you're a tax avoidant.
Yeah.
Right.
Get over yourselves. The other thing is, when things like the Panama Papers come out, that's when I get really pissed off. It's like, listen, I don't have a problem paying my taxes.
Right.
But if you're not going after the guys who are making shit tons more money
Right.
than me, right? That's when
And-
that's when I lose faith in
And
the system.
this concept is directly related to why we cannot dismantle or why we can never reduce the size of the public sector. Because there is always a belief, always in every society, whether it's Ireland, whether it's Greece, whether it's Detroit, whether it's Stockton, California, whether it's any of these jurisdictions which has suffered a meltdown or suffered a financial collapse. In every single one of them, there is always an unshakable belief that there is an untapped source of tax revenue. That the public sector says, no, you do not need to reduce the size of the public sector. What you need to do is become better and more efficient at collecting taxes. And rounding up the guys who are hiding tax or like tax evaders, you need to get those guys. You need to properly collect taxes. You need to stop writing them off or subsidizing what have you. That's what makes it impossible to reduce the size of the public sector.
Well, I think I wouldn't want to use it that way, right? I'm just saying it's the good faith, because we've gone through some exercises in talk about the numbers in terms of cash.
Yeah.
And I'm betting if you go after all the people from the Panama Papers, and you collect what ostensibly or allegedly was owed from them, it's going to be a drop in the bucket.
Yep.
Right? But it speaks to the good faith portion, right? I don't have a problem paying my taxes as long as everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? But I think we've hit on a critical part of when we talk about the public sector in this way. And I love actually the example you used and the reason you used it, Veterans Affairs.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So go with me on this, right? 'Cause
Okay.
there's a logic stream to it, right? What we need to be able to do, well, first of all, I've always argued that government just needs to be more efficient, right? All those bureaucracies and just efficiencies are shitty in the private sector, for
Right,
Christ's
let
sake.
alone public.
Guaranteed in the public.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a lot. There's scope for improvement,
Yeah.
and they need to be able to admit that. Right, that's one possible area. Right,
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of ways of doing this, but every time we talk about people losing their jobs, right, we don't want, as a society, as an economy, we don't want people to be without jobs.
Right.
Right. So that's one of the problems we're talking about. At the same time, we don't want, ideally, we understand, if we have empathy, we understand that none of these people want to end up in a position where they can't continue living life in the way that they're accustomed to.
Right.
Right. So,
Like we would like to avoid precipitous drops in standard of living.
right.
We'd like to.
So across the board, and this doesn't apply to Veterans Affairs exclusively or government bureaucracy, the public sector exclusive. This is industry. This is economy. This is national. This is cultural. This is social. Right? What we always need to be looking at is, okay, if we want to reduce costs and increase efficiencies here, if we want, and that means these people are not going to be doing these jobs anymore, right? What we always have to do is figure out, okay, what are we going to do instead? Right. And I think, this is something that the environmental movement needs to understand, right? Great. Climate change, reduce fossil fuels. We've got a whole province
or
that has been dedicated to this.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you can even put Saskatchewan in that now.
Okay.
And maybe even Newfoundland now.
Right.
3 provinces.
Yeah, I just saw actually an article this week about the Premier of Newfoundland is trying to lure Newfoundland native oil and gas workers back to Newfoundland from Alberta because they're having shortages there.
So we can't just flip the switch.
Yeah.
Right? Try to put yourself in that person's shoes. Right? They're going to be out. They're going to be out of a job. Let's figure out a plan. What we're going to do. Okay, if we're not going to do this anymore, let's have something.
If we're not going to employ a guy in the oil and gas industry, how are we going to employ him?
Right.
Likewise, if we're not going to employ a person in the public sector, how are we going to employ them?
Right. Or even we can keep them within the public sector. Let's say. Right. So, we don't want to reduce Veterans Affairs.
Okay.
Well, why not reduce Veterans Affairs and move them to the CRA? Because you're having problems keeping up on,
or say move them to a ministry where we haven't had a drop in the service like the clientele base.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Any private sector operation I go into, that's what I'm looking for. How are you people cross-trained?
Well,
right?
This is the traditional way we have framed the argument. Except now it's changing in that in 2023, we can say, what are we looking at? Say 30 million Canadians? 30?
I think
35.
We're up to 38, I think.
I think
passed.
Okay, let's say 38.
We just passed 38.
Let's say 38. In 2023, we've got 38 million people, and we have, I'm just going to say, for the sake of round numbers, I'll say 250,000 public sector workers.
Okay.
What happens when we get down to 35 million people and we still have 250,000 public sector workers? And then we get down to 32 million people and 250,000 public sector workers. That's where this question now becomes very, very different.
To me, there's a big question mark that goes with that question. Right? Are they replacing as someone retires, are they automatically replacing that person?
Well, so far, yes.
Are they? For
yes.
Sure?
Yes.
Sidebar. I saw an article how the feds are looking to cut a whole bunch of money from D&D.
Oh,
yeah, billions.
Surprised me.
I just saw a couple of clips of Wayne Eyre on, I think in front of a House committee this week.
Oh yeah,
talking about there's no way you can take $1 billion away from us and not have serious ramifications.
And not have
and then he was talking about
serious impact.
He always talking about recruiting shortfalls as well in the same clip as well. That the regular force and the reserve force are basically the same number each.
I think so. Yeah,
71 and one is 7,100 low. Collectively, the CF is 14,000 people short of his recruiting goals, which is given the size of the force.
And now we get into a discussion about the type of society we live in these days, right?
But just to put some on the numbers, I just pulled it up here from Canada.ca, the official. The population right now, 39,566,248.
Okay.
And the population of the federal public service, so not including the provinces, 357,247.
Holy cats. I do know that it has grown precipitously in the last 10 years. That we've actually added people.
Yeah.
At a higher rate than the population.
Because we have the numbers. In 2010, 13 years ago, it was 216,596. With the population was 33 million.
Okay, is anyone doing a direct per capita? I don't see the most helpful statistic there would be
let's look at
a
it.
per capita.
I'll see if I can't pull up a calculator here and see what I can find out. Calculator, where would that be? Here we are, calculator. Okay, give me some numbers, boys. Let's say 2010.
2010 population was
33 million
889,000.
889,000.
236.
236, and we'll divide that by
282,980.
282,980?
Yeah.
282,980, and that equals 119.75
people per civil servant.
Yeah, so let's
120
look at that. Okay,
people
now
per
I got it
public
clear.
servant.
Okay, so let's go to 2023, where it was 39,566,248, 566,248, divide by
We're going to be down into double digits.
357,247.
Yeah, it's almost 10%, right?
Yeah,
Or almost 1%.
11.07.
Whoa.
Massive drop. Massive drop.
It's 10%. It's under 10%.
It's
Seriously?
Let me redo that. Let me redo those numbers. 39 million.
We've got-
566.
Holy shit.
Oh no, sorry. I missed it. I missed a digit.
yeah, that didn't sound quite right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it would be like a 90 or something
Yeah.
for civil servant, not 11.
3889. 39.
It's a 1%. It's a little under 1%, right?
248. Divide by 357,247. 357,247. 110.69.
From
Okay.
120.
Yeah, from 120. Well, 119 something.
119, yeah.
Yeah.
So our ratio has gone down a little bit. But mind you, look, that's some pretty impressive population growth.
Yeah, and that's largely on the back of immigration.
And that's 100% immigration.
National Post, I saw they were doing YouTube shorts. They
Yeah.
did a bunch on immigration.
Yeah.
And they pointed out that the present rates were importing the entire population of the Yukon,
Yeah.
the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut every 2
Yeah.
months.
Yeah,
Every 2 months?
Every 2 months.
yeah. For example, our fertility rate in 2019 was, or in 2020, was 1.509 births per woman. Now remember, 2.3
Is
or
replacement.
2.1, depending on how you count it.
Yeah,
is
and what's
replacement
the
rate.
number you just quoted?
1.509.
So we're not even at half.
We
are at half. Okay.
So a 0.53%, 0.5% decline from 2019. In 2021, it was 1.5, a 0.6% decline. In 2022, it dropped to 1.492, a 0.53% decline. And then in 2023, so far, we are at 1.484.
So there was not even a pandemic bump.
No.
I was actually going to
Yeah,
ask.
not
I was
even
looking for a
pandemic
pandemic bump.
Yeah, there was nothing.
So we are losing 0.5% of our fertility rate every single year. And immigrants fall into this. So we are increasing, like again, we're pumping the population of what, 2 territories?
Yeah. Well, all three territories.
All
three
three
territories.
territories into the country, like
Every
every
two-
single
To
year.
me, they're all only
or how long?
ever be
Every
2
single
territories.
month, right?
Every 2 months. Every 2 months we equal
like we're
the
aiming
territories.
for something like we're at, what are we, like just short of 1 million a year that we're importing?
Yeah. And so the population of the territories is like 100,000 people
Right.
or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like 50,000 people a month.
So when folks arrive here from overseas and they come into Canada, they're not having kids.
Well, and the other issue is that National Post did something on this as well. Literally right now, only 30% of the immigrants we import, not only 30, 30% of the immigrants we import only stay 2 years. And then,
and then they
either
move on.
They move on or they go home.
I can see that.
They're just because
see
of the housing affordability crisis
Yeah,
and lots
I
of
can
other
see
things.
that.
They're just Canada isn't what it was cracked up to be.
Yeah,
So.
our economy is kind of stagnant.
Yeah.
And this is part of the problem with relying on immigration to stabilize your population. Let's compete with the United States. Like we are competing with the United States, with Australia, with the United Kingdom. Like let's say you have certain things that you want in a nation. Let's say you've got education in English.
Yeah.
So ideally, you would like to find an English-speaking country so you can capitalize on that, on the investment you've made in your immigration. Let's say you want a country that is predictable rule of law, a predictable court system, and stable public institutions. Okay, and let's face it, that narrows. Like Argentina is now off the table, right? Like you're looking for a place to go. You're looking for a place to make your home, make your future. You want something for your kids. Like, do they have good schools? We want something for our parents. Do they have good medical system? Like, so we're kind of like Eastern Europe, kind of falling off the board here, right? And if we go back to that English language requirement, okay, I guess Scandinavia, that's an option for you. The United Kingdom,
certainly Sweden.
Yeah, exactly. The United States, but then okay, what do we? Our climate is hands down a disadvantage to us.
Oh, absolutely.
Hands down.
Well, in Edmonton, it certainly is.
Everywhere. I mean, Edmonton, yeah,
especially if you come from the Indian subcontinent.
Totally.
Unless you're like from the Punjab or somewhere up there, right? Like
in the high altitude.
In the high altitudes. Like if you're from Goa or
like Delhi,
or
exactly,
and you wind up even in Toronto.
Yeah,
right?
Like, this is stupid.
Yeah,
like the air hurts my face. Why am I living here?
I have a lot of admiration and respect for people who come here from
such Africa. Guy comes here from Nigeria.
But most of them I speak to, they're like, you know what? It was interesting and fascinating. It was miserable, but I still love being here.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. But still, when you're choosing a place, and then there are the other economic downsides. Canada is not just on the periphery of North America. We are on the periphery of the world. We are far away from every single major market in the world.
Well, I mean, no, we've got the U.S.
Yeah, but our stuff is as far. Like, who's closer to California? Us or the Mexicans? Us or Guatemala?
Yeah, okay, so California.
Well, we're closer to Guatemala, but
I don't know. I think Guatemala's closer to California than we are.
No, it is a 28-hour drive from here to Los Angeles.
Well, how far is it to drive from Guatemala to?
It's more than 28 hours just to get it the length of Mexico.
Consult the Google.
But at any rate, we are not on primary trade routes, right? So if you're opening a business, let's say you're an entrepreneur, let's say you're some guy in some graduate in Milan or Auckland or Lagos, and you've got a great idea. And you can take this idea anywhere in the world and set it up. If you go to Canada, your costs are going to be higher than if you say we're in Western Europe or along one of the seaboards in the United States.
That's ironic.
Right?
Yeah,
What's
but
that?
I mean Western Europe, because you get so much population.
Well, also you are at the maritime hub of the world.
Well, I mean, we do have trade hubs here.
We do.
We've got Vancouver.
Yeah.
Compare
its traffic to Los Angeles, to the Port of Los Angeles, or the Port of Seattle.
If for 1/10 the population, we're doing more per capita.
It doesn't matter.
Pretty sure.
It doesn't matter per capita. We're talking about raw dollars and cents and your ability to export to the rest of the world. Canada comes with downsides.
I'm going to argue
I'll close my point just by saying that we have a variety of downsides that the United States does not, Australia does not, South Africa does not. Well, no, take them out.
Yeah, take South Africa.
Yeah, because they're collapsing.
Well,
But
they're actively going after foreigners, right?
Yeah. And that the UK does not have. We are going to have to, in this age of shrinking populations, we are going to have to compete for immigrants in ways that we never had before.
What really gets me is, and it's gotten me for a long time, and it's exponential now, is how we absolutely fail to acknowledge medical degrees, medical training, educational training, university degrees, because we're daring to compare to our education system here.
Yep.
Right?
We're protecting our education
So our
system.
and
It's protectionism.
and all those, especially medical degrees
Yeah.
and nursing degrees, that's all public sector
It's a cartel.
cartel. Yeah, union
Yeah.
or cartel,
Yeah,
right?
it's a massive union.
And yet-
Because you got to remember, in Canada, medical school admissions
Mm-hmm.
are controlled by provinces,
Yes,
right? Because based on what they foresee their demand to be, and of course,
which
we
are
all know.
controlled by the colleges.
Yes,
Yeah,
Well,
the union. Sorry, the college union.
the colleges are basically unions.
It's a union.
Yeah,
So, but I mean, we've got so many, especially since COVID.
Yep.
Well, before COVID, we already had some of our best and brightest in the medical field. We're all going to the States.
That's been happening for
Right.
50
I know.
years, man.
It's been happening for 50 years.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no price to pay for that.
Yeah.
Right? Since COVID, we've got increased need for medical staff, and a lot of people are burnt out. So, once again, it's like find a way to certify, to upgrade, to create some sort of interim certification for people so that we can. That is how we can compete and make use of immigrants instead of having people who have
asking to make reforms to a medical system that has a lot of people who make a lot of money on the current system as it is, and your ideas are a threat to their lot of money. Not going to happen, man. I mean, dude. How long have we had this medical system? Since the 1960s?
Yeah.
68, 67, something like that?
No, I think my
Or was it
impression's always
63,
been
64?
I keep going back to 64 for some reason. I
For
don't
the
know
Canada
why.
Health Act? Okay, let's say 64. So what are we looking at? 60 years?
yeah, 60 years next year.
60 years across 10 provinces and 3 territories. The greatest minds in public administration over 3 generations cannot make this thing work. It is what it is. It's not going to get better. It won't get better. It can't, because every time somebody tries to make it better, the fearmongers come out. Oh my God, we're going to get American healthcare. We're all going to die in the street. And everything collapses.
I'll settle for German healthcare.
So would I.
You could pick a European model and it'd be better
Yeah,
than ours,
it'd
right?
be better
other
than
than
ours.
other than the UK's.
Yep.
But yeah,
other
pick-
than the UK's. Finland. I think Finland's got a pretty good healthcare model.
Well, I'm sure they do.
Except
and it
whenever-
involves hot tubs and saunas.
Well, there you go.
and long drink.
Yeah, and some pretty good cell phones. But every time you get into this conversation, instantly it becomes a binary. It's either the system we got or the American system.
Oh, yeah.
And the people who are arguing generally know nothing about the American system, except they believe that people are dying on the street all the time. And so like they're working from, not only they're working from an exceptionally parochial premise, they don't even understand the premise they're on. And it becomes such an emotional, fear-based conversation.
Well, absolutely, but those are the days we live in.
We're not gonna fix
and we get that from both ends of the spectrum,
I'm not going to fix
right?
it.
Well, okay, I'm going to
Healthcare, unfixable.
I'm going to challenge you on that because we came into this conversation saying this can't last, right?
Yeah,
way or another,
Yeah.
and even you guys said it, right? It either gets fixed or it fixes itself.
Well,
right? So
it collapses.
right? Exactly,
And then something new arises to replace it.
right.
That's a pretty chaotic way
So,
to say
well,
fix
people-
itself.
As the libertarian, I have to admit that I'm a fan of creative destruction.
Yes, and that's what it is. Yeah, creative destruction.
Well,
now, are you
it'd be
talking
creativity
this-
resulting from destruction.
Now,
more
now.
than-
You talk about
That
this
would
in
be-
the Tower Tarot card kind of way, or in the Death Tarot card
Death
kind of
tarot
way?
card, I think.
yeah, probably.
Now, on the one hand, you could say a declining population is going to ease some of the stress on our emergency rooms, on our medical staffs, because our patient to professional ratio is going to drop.
Except it's going to be older.
It will be older.
Yeah, this is the problem.
Well, this has a limited time. This is like the whole demographic problem. The whole idea of this massive surge of seniors will not outlive the baby boomers. So that's only a problem for the next 20 years, and primarily the next 10. After that, the number of the baby boomers greatly declines as they pass from this life. But the overall demographic problem still persists.
Yeah, well, the problem still persists that Gen X is bigger than millennials,
Right.
and millennials are
we
bigger than Zoomers.
still have that
and Zoomers
inverted population scheme. Even if your population, your demographic diagram becomes a pencil, it's still a problem in that as we get older, we draw more on the system than when we are younger. Your effect is disproportionate.
And we've had fewer people putting into the system.
Right. If you don't have a pyramid, you got a problem. Any way you slice it. So that is going to persist past the baby boomers. That's going to persist past Gen X.
Right. So it needs fixing. So you heard it here first, folks. We got a problem coming.
We definitely got a problem coming. Huge problem. But I don't think our society is going to be able to come to grips with it. Nobody else has. This has faced the Greeks.
The Europeans have.
It faced. Italy's facing it now.
Well, I'm speaking in terms of the healthcare.
No.
Right.
Well, Greece collapsed. If it weren't for the Germans bailing them out.
I said the healthcare. The healthcare system is a two-tier system.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I mean like the whole demographic issue and the sustainability of be it healthcare, emergency services, utilities, water purification, police, justice, all of the whole of government. No society has been able to solve this problem of adequately restructuring government to account for a smaller tax base.
Who do you think is to watch? Because like is it like Japan or South Korea? Are they furthest down the road?
Yes.
Was Italy is the oldest population in Europe right now, right? So is that the model? Is like watching what happens in Italy is probably going to be when we really start to pay attention, or
maybe. I mean, Japan and South Korea are definitely on the
furthest down the road.
They're the first down the road, and that's why I opened with that stat of abandoned and empty homes in both of those countries.
Yeah. Well, what that made me think of, because after Detroit, the second sign I saw of all this was when we started seeing that all these Italian towns are offering free houses.
Yeah, you can buy houses in Italy for really cheap, like $1 or something.
Now those ones are all the decrepit ones.
Yeah.
You can buy one for 10,000 euros that you don't have to refurbish completely.
Right.
You can actually move into when you get there.
Yeah.
But the principle's the same.
I should look into that. I need to flog this place. Maybe you can move to Ortona.
Probably.
And again, they're trying to attract taxpayers.
But they probably don't want people like me.
Not just taxpayers, but consumers.
People like you, non-Catholic?
No, people who are in middle age.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't want you because you're already on the downside of
what you want to do? No, they want you to run a B&B for Canadian tourists.
Yeah, maybe
English-speaking tourists.
Me running a B&B. Jesus.
I don't know if they want tourism.
Venice doesn't want tourism.
Venice sure don't want them. That's for sure. That is and Rome don't want tourism.
Ortona wouldn't mind it, probably.
Yeah, Ortona probably would take it. Yeah.
Well, if Rome doesn't want tourism, they shouldn't have all those historical structures.
Yeah, move them to Ortona.
They shouldn't have all that damn history there.
Yeah, move them to Ortona. Move it to
Tear 'em down.
Colosseum, Spanish Steps.
Yeah, move all
Senate.
that stuff.
Get rid of it.
Yeah.
They'll send the tourists off.
Yeah, that would stop the tourism, wouldn't it?
So another interesting stat or trend of stats I've heard in the last, 2-3 months, of all the immigration coming to Canada, it's all coming to Alberta. We are getting
Alberta is the biggest, is the quickest growing.
And I understand that we're also getting migration from other provinces.
Yes.
Or what I heard was that Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal are getting all the immigrants.
Yeah.
We are getting all the migrants.
Well, and no, we're getting both.
I
think
imagine.
we're getting more than our demographic
Yeah,
share of both.
I would imagine.
Right. And what I find, and so in this day and age, I find that very poignant because we are the bad province when it comes to climate change. right?
We're supposed to be the ignorant, uncultured, uncouth.
And labor laws and all that stuff.
Like
right?
we're the land of Mordor compared to the wonderful, genteel, intelligent. And like we're dumb and we're illiterate compared to, the genteel, refined, cultured people of Vancouver.
Yeah.
Yet people are leaving there to come here.
Yeah.
Well, because they can't afford to be there. I mean, so it speaks to one way or another, no matter how you look at it.
Culture's great, but if you can't feed your kids.
Something's happening in Alberta that people are recognizing. And they're saying, okay, this is for me. That there is a life for me in Alberta.
Well,
the way there isn't
I would
in
say
the rest of
that's
Canada.
fairly obvious. That we've had, since 1971, we have had 1 4-year period of government, like the NDP has, and the CCF prior, has had a non-stop governmental influence over Alberta, except for one brief year, I think in 2016 to 2019 or something, where the Conservatives were in, and they had a silly, they tried very hard to move the needle further to the right. They failed. Alberta has had a consistent, progressive, left of center political and social orientation, which has resulted in decades of prosperity, which is reflected in the society today. And that's why people are leaving conservative provinces like BC, like Ontario, like Quebec, to come to a place governed intergenerationally progressive principles. It's pretty clear to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll have to edit it.
100%.
The sound of my eyes rolling over.
I'll have to edit in the sarcastic font after.
I mean, that's exactly why people are coming here.
It took me a couple of sentences. What? Huh? What?
Who? What are you?
Oh, I get it. Yes, very amusing. Very amusing.
yes. As we swirl our brandy in the snifters, yes. Other things to consider. Right now, we are looking at that population surge of the baby boomers, as the youngest of the baby boomers are now in their 60s and are going to retire.
Actually, I
soon.
can claim to be of the youngest of the baby boomers.
Yeah.
And I'm not yet in my 60s.
Well, you're close. You're knocking on the door.
65 is I can pick and choose whether I'm baby boomer or Gen X.
I guess, okay. But something to consider. I've got my father's antique car.
Oh, yeah. So I talked to Karen about that thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, geez.
We'll talk about that offline. Oh, yeah. I'll send you some pictures. I'm headed out to do some service on in October. I'll call you if you want to come along.
Right on. He's like, I go shooting with Steve. I got to see your antique car.
Yeah.
Call me.
Oh, you want to see it? Okay, yeah, sure. I'll bring you on.
Well, I'll show you how to drive it.
Yes. God, double clutch the damn thing. Yeah. So anyway, I've been trying to sell it.
Yeah.
And very, very, very difficult. Now, I had tried to sell it through ads and whatnot in the past 5-6 years. Got no luck. This last year is the first year that I've actually gone to car shows. And
did you go that one on 149th at the?
I did. Yes.
Were you there?
Yes, at the Trail Tire. Yeah, at the tire. It was a tire dealership, right?
No,
I'm pretty sure it was
wholesale club.
Okay, no, I was not there.
There's one every year at the wholesale club.
I was at the one. It was in August,
okay.
And it was at, I believe, a Trail Tire location, and it was primarily hot rod. But yeah, I was there.
Just as an aside, the Safeway on Y Road there. Yeah. They're every Tuesday.
Oh, show and shine there.
Yeah, every Tuesday night.
Yeah. So I've been taking the vehicle around to making the investment in it to show it and take it to car shows. Primarily because I thought, well, I should at least try and understand what this is about, because that was my father's passion. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try and do this. And I see now a massive glut of antique cars, particularly hot rods. There's always been more hot rods than restorations. That's always been the case. And there's a huge glut of them on the market. So if you're looking to buy that that 69 Mustang, that 72 Corvette.
It's out there. Someone's got it.
Now's the time. The next 10 years is the time. Because the baby boomers started in their 30s as,
Is that before or after we go to war with Russia?
hopefully before.
Okay.
Hopefully we can put that off a long time. Like these guys started in their 30s, like is the gearhead, wrencher working on something and, in the garage doing his thing, and he did his first hot rod and he loved it. But then he got, he gets into his 40s, earning a little bit more money. Kids are a little bit older. He's got a bit more knowledge, got a bit more disposable income. He says, now...
a bit more time on his hands.
A bit more time. I've always wanted that 74 Mach 1 with the 351 Cleveland.
That car doesn't exist, by the way.
Whatever.
73.
73.
Yeah, 74 went to his Mustang. Too.
Okay, and what size? And it was the 351 Windsor as well, right?
Yes, Windsor and Cleveland the same size, but different motors.
Slightly different furniture on them. Yeah.
Well, no, they're actually different motors. There's no parts compatibility
Okay.
between the
There
two
you go.
motors. But
So let's say he wants that. He wants that Cleveland. He wants that motor. Now he's got the wherewithal to get it and rebuild it. And so that's his love. And so then he gets into his 50s. He misses a project. Having it is great and it's fun to drive, but he misses wrenching. So he gets one. He tells himself, it's for the wife. Or, my son is 10 or 12. I want one for him. Whatever. He wants something to build. So he gets a third one. And now he's faster at it. So it doesn't take him near as long. And in his late 50s, he does a fourth one. So now here he's 71 years old. And he lives out in the acreage. He's got this big, beautiful shop and a Quonset hut where he stores these vehicles. But he's 71. And it's getting hard to look after this place. It's getting hard to look after all of this stuff. And he's looking to thin this stuff out. And he thinks, you know what? I'll keep the first one because that was my first. And I'm going to keep the Mustang because that's my love. But the third one I did and the fourth one I did, I don't drive them anymore. I rarely take them out.
yeah.
I'm going to offload them. Well, there's this massive demographic bulge that's all doing that at the same time. Now let's go forward another 10 to 15 years when these baby boomers are gone. Okay, the cars will be sold by that time. Think of all the tool sets. Mm-hmm. You're going to have guys with massive sets of tools and, engine hoists and bearing pullers and you name it. All of this stuff is going to be appearing in estate sales as the most affluent generation in human history. Dies out and is now offloading this stuff. And see, it's not just something that you can just inherit. It's not just something say, well, I'll pass all these tools on to my son. No, your son is an accountant. Your son is a software programmer. Your son is a television producer. And he'd love to drive around in the car with you, but he's not a gearhead. He's not a wrench puller like you were. He doesn't really have a use for those tools, so he's going to sell them. Mm-hmm. And they're all going to be on the market more or less at once. So if you got a kid right now in Gen Z who's showing a mechanical aptitude, that guy's got some good deals coming his way. We're going to build this massive glut, or not a glut, but there's going to be a huge boom in seniors' facilities. Because we need to find a way to house the boomers when they're no longer able to keep their own residences. So what do we do in 2050, 2060? When that massive demographic bulge that was filling up all of these seniors' homes is gone? Well, what do we do with those homes?
Well, I know, based on what you just said, with all those tools.
They're now low-income housing.
Yeah. Do we repurpose them as kind of a like? When was the last time you were in a senior's home?
To visit my grandparents, and that would have been 2000. I don't know, late 2000s.
Okay, so a while ago. My mom lives in a home. I walk in, it's a security door. There's an access control. Mm-hmm. I walk in, and the first thing I see is a large open space area, which is kind of a recreational area. Like there's some billiard tables in there, there's some shuffleboard tables in there. There's also a dance floor. But this is a multi-purpose space that they do for a variety of activities. They do classes in there, what have you. There's a presentation room just down the other side. Then as you go forward, there's basically a restaurant. Mm-hmm. The residents can eat in their own apartments, but generally they don't.
Right.
They come down to this area where it's a seating, and it is, for all intents and purposes, a restaurant. There's a commercial kitchen, and servers bring the meals to the tables. They order what they want from a menu. It just that instead of paying right there at the table, it's covered as part of their monthly rent. Mm-hmm. And someone comes and feeds them, and then they go back up to their, they go their own ways, and then the staff cleans up behind them. And then they have their individual apartments. But on each floor, there's a library, there's a gym, like a small rec facility, this sort of thing. You could easily repurpose that. I mean, don't you think that there might be a market for that? Especially, remember you were talking about the book Bowling Alone?
Me? Not me.
I thought that was you. No. Where the majority of people today under the age of 30, the biggest single demographic, over 50%, slightly over 50%, lives alone.
Yeah.
So let's say you're a person who, you live alone, you're not part of a relationship. What if you don't like cooking? Cooking for one person, night after night after night after night, is really inefficient. It's inefficient in terms of time. It's
and
inefficient
annoying.
In terms of money. It's annoying.
And cleanup is even more annoying.
Yeah. What if I could give you an apartment where you say, as part of your rent, you go down and you have a meal, like you eat basically in kind of like a live-in restaurant. And it's going to be cheaper. Like all three of us buying groceries, say like we're three individual dudes.
Yeah.
We can, even if we all go to Costco, buying groceries just for ourselves and cooking just for ourselves is not as efficient. If we pooled our income like this to staff that kitchen, we get economies of scale. That might, even with the fact that you're paying somebody else to do it, that might be more efficient.
You're actually onto something.
And
like without even being cynical. Go ahead.
The other thing is like not even the economy of scale, but like if you're starting to buy from restaurant suppliers, you're actually getting better quality ingredients as well, right?
Because exactly. When you're buying it at those kind of quantities, you can also get deals from suppliers. You can demand higher levels of quality.
Yep.
How much is your time worth? Let's say we're urban professionals.
Yeah.
And we work from home, which may be more common going forward. I don't want to take time, like my home is my workplace. I don't want to lose, and let's say I'm a creative type. I don't want to lose productive time, creative time in my kitchen, doing something I don't like anyway.
Well, I think there you've hit the nail on the head because I've noticed this a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, near as I can tell, a lot of kids these days, they don't buy groceries. If they do, they're not buying produce or raw meat, or they don't like cooking for themselves. They eat out a lot. They order in a lot, right? I think actually, folks, Patty's onto something here.
Yeah,
like start investing in
maybe in seniors' homes.
In seniors' homes,
because when we convert them, I think I don't think it would be a real tough sell to get to fill vacancies in an apartment based on that senior's model.
So here's my train of thought that went with that. One is, I eventually went, well, there's still going to be a need for seniors' homes because there's going to be open.
Yes.
However,
we're just going to have a surplus of them.
We're going to have a surplus of them. So if you're the first to step away from that and become, okay, now we got basically... We're an all-inclusive apartment building.
Yeah. There's no reason you can't still house seniors in the thing.
You could, yes.
As well, right?
100% you could.
No, but you're charging different rates here, right? Because I was going to say, well, you can't charge the same amount that you're charging the seniors. Because first of all, they've built up a lot of pension, right?
It depends on who the senior is.
They sold their house. However, you're not having to pay for the medical staff.
That's right.
The nursing and all that stuff.
That's right.
Right.
Now, consider if we had one of these facilities for people who are disabled in whatever way. Mm-hmm. Let's say we've got people who have a variety, say it's learning disabilities, physical disabilities, movement disabilities, cognitive disabilities, whatever you want. Name it all. What, if at all possible, we don't want to institutionalize these folks. We want to give them as much autonomy and as much independence as we possibly can. So we've always seen the benefit of having them in their own residence, but they do need assistance. Mm-hmm. So we do have social workers who do go and check up on them from time, like 1 or 2 times a week. Just check on them. Hey, how you doing? How are you okay? Welfare check. You know, are you getting your groceries? Do you have any concerns? You got any problems?
No,
right?
you could have an in-house.
Think of the savings in time.
Yeah.
Instead of having that social worker spending 40 to 60% of their day traveling in city traffic, going from client to client to client to client, they can have a variety of clients under one roof. And so they can spend a majority of their time not traveling, but interacting. Face to face, like right at the pointy end of service delivery, the majority of, like far more of their time would be spent doing the thing that we expect a social worker to do as opposed to traveling.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's, like at first I thought of it, what a great place this would be for disabled folks who want, exactly like seniors, they need a higher level of support, but they still want a level of independence and self-direction and dignity. Well, we structure seniors' homes like that. We could structure it that way for disabled folks. And then I thought from there, actually, skip being disabled, there's a lot of people who would like to have that sort of function where you have a sense of community in your building. You leave your house, you go down. Like, think of how much more difficult basic training would have been for you if you had to cook your own food.
Oh, jeez.
That would have said that
forget.
That was the best eating I had in my life.
But think about it. All the tasks you had to do on basic training, cleaning, your weapon, yourself, your PT, everything.
And your quarters and all that.
And your quarters. Oh, now we need to add 90 minutes.
And we didn't even have time to eat the food. For
exactly.
And now you have to clean the kitchen for inspection?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to cook your own food. You got to buy your own groceries. Like, it would have been untenable. Yeah. Well, imagine a guy who's like that now. He's very dedicated to the career, urban professional, creative kind of individual, or maybe even not, maybe a tradesman. But they're working some overtime. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, you know what? I'll do a couple hours of overtime because I don't have to buy groceries. I don't have to take that time out. Now, also consider we may be going into a world where travel is restricted, where you can't just jump in your car and drive down to the big box store. We're talking about like the 15-minute city where we're going to restrict who is allowed to drive and where they can drive. So going and buying your groceries is going to be more of a burden. Like say you only have public transit. One of the hardest things to do on public transit is buying groceries. Because you don't have the trunk of a car. You don't everything has to be man portable when you're on the bus.
Now we're back to investing in tinfoil again, for crying out loud.
No. This is like you remember as a student when you were completely dependent on public transit. One of the hardest things to do was groceries. I remember that. I had the bus.
I remember playing a lot of foosball and drinking a lot of beer.
Okay, but like I had my bicycle, and I had my bus, and I was limited to, like in the summer I could load up my panniers, the saddlebags on my bike, but each grocery trip was limited to what I could physically carry, and that meant I had to go to the grocery store minimum twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week.
I think.
And so there was a time penalty in that. Well, when I'm a student, I can afford to trade time for money because I have very little money. I have more time. But let's say you are now in your earning years, your time definitely has a higher value. Well, if you can outsource your buying of groceries, your preparing of food, your doing of dishes, your doing of laundry, if you can outsource all of that to your apartment building and we all combine it, maybe there's a market for that going forward.
Well, you think? I mean, you've spent about 15 minutes too many trying to convince me of this. I'm already in.
You're already
Right? So I think it's just for Steve to put up the link. So disclaimer: Dragon's Den. This is our idea.
Yeah, this is ours.
Right?
If you touch
But
it, we will sue you.
This episode isn't going up until we get the business plan written down.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. This is our way going forward, boys.
This is great. I wish my mom was still alive because my mom actually managed senior citizens
So
complex.
she'd know how to do this.
Yeah. She managed 5 of them at one time.
Wow.
And so like most of them are actually owned by Legion branches.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
And they're subsidized. Like
Makes
obviously
perfect
they're
sense.
subsidized by
Yeah,
the
makes
government.
perfect
But yeah,
sense.
like she not all of them, but she
Found a high number.
yeah, like 3 of the 5 that she did, she was always complaining about having to go to Legion meetings because
They're owned by the Legion branch.
Yeah, because they were, and then having to deal with Legion executives because
Now, did the Legions run them at a profit or a loss?
I think they ran them as nonprofits, to be honest.
Okay.
Because they were pretty heavily subsidized. as
Yeah,
well.
man.
Right.
Because I thought, who knows, that might be a revenue center for a Legion now that their membership, that World War II generation is gone.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Like, so it survives as an entity, right?
That actually raises, since we are the generation that kind of bridged the, it was all about the First and Second Wars.
Oh, totally.
And we knew the Second War
Totally.
events.
And like,
right?
look at that. Look how the Legion might disappear completely.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
wondering. Like,
Well-
when we're talking about Legion executives, and I've been hearing for years how dysfunctional they are and how acrimonious they can be and stuff like that. So I'm thinking, okay, if that's the greatest generation that's being acrimonious having that shit, well,
Yeah.
then good on them. Fill your boots, right?
Yep.
Because you earned it, right?
Yeah, you earned it.
Now, who's going to sit on a Legion board
Yeah.
these days for the Afghan mission? Like,
Yeah.
no one I can imagine.
There's just not enough interest in it.
Well,
It's
and
just
the
not
Legion,
the same
like,
type of thing.
anyone can join the Legion now. They open it up
Yeah.
to anyone. My dad joined the Legion. My dad never served a day in the
Yeah.
military or
Yeah.
in civil service at all,
Yeah.
right? Like,
The Legion doesn't really mean anything now.
yeah.
Well, I imagine.
Yet, as
but-
an institution, what is our society going to look like? Like, think of all the charitable work the Legions did in the 70s and 80s. Vimy Ridge Academy, a school,
Yeah.
only existed because it was the last gasp of Alberta Northwest Territories Command. The last injection of cash that they had. They were trying to build a legacy. That's not
Really?
going to be there for future generations because that organization is gone.
But the school's still going to exist.
Vimy Ridge Academy is gone. It's not there. I don't
Really?
think it is.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
something
think
else
there.
now.
Yeah, it's something else.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Because that was Bonnie Doon.
Right.
Yeah, it was about being high.
And then
Yeah.
Vimarich, and you got me in there. I was in there briefly. I was
Yeah.
helping serve the cadets there on
Yeah.
cadet nights. I was
Yeah.
in stores.
Yep. But anyway, that's an example of how demographic change is going to play out.
I can actually see the Legion surviving in smaller towns.
Yeah, perhaps because it's one of the few watering holes.
Well, it's again, you talk
Yeah.
about being an institution. That's
Yeah.
institutionally, it's
Yeah.
going to survive because it's a community focal point
Maybe.
in addition to
Maybe.
just being.
But it might just be a bar.
Yeah,
Now, did you take a look at that film I recommended, Birth Gap?
not yet.
It's worth your time. He interviews a school teacher, an elementary school teacher in Switzerland,
Okay.
who has realized that he's just starting out. He's just new graduate. He realizes that he's not going to be able to, he probably won't be able to continue this. Like, he won't be able to retire as a school teacher because there's simply not enough kids in his municipality coming in. He's going to have to relocate or do something. Our education system, we made this massive building program of new universities to service the baby boom generation. And of course, the baby boomers passed out of student age. The universities, and of course, we expanded existing universities. We built new universities. Like, say, in the Alberta context, University of Calgary, University of Lethbridge. Augustana College became a university. Athabasca University.
And people are starting to go back into trades now too. So
The
at a time when the population is declining.
The universities, going through the 80s and 90s, went on a massive marketing blitz to convince people that a university education was necessary for absolutely everyone.
Yeah.
This was new. This did not exist prior to the 1960s. That only some people needed.
Yeah,
a
I know.
university degree.
When I applied in '84, the marks were ridiculously low. I think it was like part of a 3-year window where you just need an average of
basically
70 or something.
Basically, like in the 1960s, early 1960s, 1950s. Yeah, only a very small select few ever attended a university. Now, if you can pay tuition, they'll find a way to get you in. They want as many people as they can get. It's a for-profit industry
But that's, I mean, so now with the population decline, it seems only natural to me that they're competing with each other.
Yep.
They can't all win.
Nope.
So either they all average out to not enough, which means they have to lower their profit expectations and their operation
We're
costs.
already seeing this. Like, again, we're not going to see this in Canada until about 2050. But we're seeing it now in the United States with all of these small, very historic, 200-year-old, small little kind of private colleges, specialty colleges in the United States, which only ever had, say, 400 or 500 students. And they tended to have a specialty. Like, say, one would be law, one would be medicine, one would be philosophy, blah, 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 blah. As these areas depopulate, and again, the overall America still has a positive fertility rate. It's one of the few, I think it's the only developed nation that still does, but it's barely positive.
Yeah.
And they are
Thanks largely to Hispanics, I think, as well.
Yes. And they are experiencing a consolidation.
Single black women.
Our people are...
You did not just
Wow. Wow.
Good night, folks.
Yeah, okay.
Well, but the American welfare system, I mean...
No, I get you, yeah.
To play the Radio Free Ortona drinking game, that's another podcast.
Yeah.
But the American welfare system, the Great Society incentivized single motherhood.
I didn't find that funny at all.
But at any rate, we are seeing a massive expansion in the big state universities. And these smaller specialty private colleges are being squeezed out.
Oh, it's like the big boxing. It's like strip malls. It's like mom and pop stores.
Yep. So we're seeing the same. We're seeing the very, very first drops now of what's going to become a flood that's going to hit the education industry like a hammer.
Well, you've got to personally be looking forward to that.
Oh yeah,
yeah, you academic fucks. How do you like that?
Yeah, exactly. But again, that's our next episode. How we reform education.
That's right.
But that's another example of we have a massive bureaucracy that is an arm of the state that will not willingly downsize, and they will fight tooth and nail every inch because for them it is an existential crisis.
That's interesting. Sidebar: they just opened a new library at. I think it's a medical dental library or something at the U of A.
Yep. Now again,
I just thought, that's interesting. But
times,
in the context of what you're talking about,
was this one engineered by the U of A engineering department? So they're gonna have to move the books to the other side of the library every year.
Yeah, this is not going to be a huge issue. I mean, times are still good in terms of Canadian universities. Our population is projected to continue to grow until 2050.
But not necessarily go to university.
Not necessarily. At least they will have the pool of people available. However, that said, Ibbotson and Brickell, who are two leading Canadian authors, who have just released a fantastic book on this, they project global fertility will be negative by 2050. The UN is predicting 2080, 2085. Ibbotson and Brickell are saying, no. It's going to happen way sooner than that.
Well, you
2050 at the latest.
You pulled up an article an hour ago that it's still there. Population likely to peak sooner and lower than expected with beneficial results.
But
this is from the Guardian from March of this year.
And also, it quotes the Club of Rome, who have never been right in anything they've ever said ever in history. So let's take it with a huge grain of salt. Like, this is like projecting our playoff pool using only Toronto Maple Leafs, players. But that said, we're still, we build up all of this infrastructure in Canada, say, for sure, until 2035. For sure, the next 10, 12 years. So if you are a tenured professor right now, say we were tenured professors right now, we're fine. We got nothing to worry about. But what's our life expectancy going to be? Figure 80? We should make it till about 2060. We should be okay. If the bottom doesn't start to fall out until 2045, 2050, if we make it to our 2060 or so, pensions should still be there for us. Gen Z? No way. Millennials? Probably not. Who's gonna? And the millennials are bigger than either Gen X or Gen Z.
Isn't the whole point of pension funds to be invested and gain interest to cover its commitment?
That is the idea, but they generally don't work that way.
Well, and then some countries run their pension plans as part of general revenue.
Right. And the other thing is people live longer now. Again, when we what was the life expectancy of an adult male when we created the CPP? I believe it was less than 10 years after retirement.
Yeah, it was pretty short.
Yeah, probably 74.
Yeah,
I think 74 was the life expectancy back in the day.
Yeah, and retirement was 65, right?
Right. So it was, you were single digits, so you were going to be paying this guy out. Now
it's 30 years.
Now it's 30 years.
Thanks a lot, socialized medicine.
And
well, probably
returns,
commercial medicine in the United States for advances
returns on investments are going to drop precipitously with the baby boomers. We're headed into a credit crunch. When you're in your 30s, your 20s, you're not really spending anything because you don't have the income.
Yeah.
And what you do spend is like pizza and beer. But then you get into your 30s, you marry, you settle down, you start your life. You are buying like crazy. You're buying your house, you're buying your car, you're buying your furniture, you're buying a crib, you're buying bicycles for your kids, and it's all on credit. Because you don't have the money to do that stuff now. So you're leveraged to hell. You get into your 40s, okay, now you're paying off those debts. You're not buying the house, like you've done the starter home, now you've got the forever home, you're set up, you're stable, you're really into your earning years now. Your kids aren't costing you as much money as they did in the first 10 years of their lives. You're a bit more stable, you've earned a bit more, and you're not consuming as much. You're still consuming a little bit, but not as much. And you're also kind of thinking, mid-40s, maybe I should start looking at retirement. So you do start a retirement thing. But there's still a lot of other stuff to do. So you don't give it a whole lot. It's not a huge priority, but it's there. Then you get into your 50s. Now you're thinking a lot more about retirement. And you're spending a lot less because you've got everything. You've got the car, you've got the furniture, you've got the house. Your kids have, moved out. They're on their own. So now you're really putting a lot of money into your retirement. You're putting a lot of money into your retirement. In fact, that's your dominant form of expenditure. Then you turn 60. You got 5 years left in your working life. You are investing every bloody dime you have. Because at 65, you're not investing anymore. You start drawing out. That is the pattern of the baby boomers. So for the last 15 years, there's been this massive pool of money that's been there to be invested, and it's looking for a place to invest. That's why the entire developed world has been able to do quantitative easing, because you can borrow that money from the international money markets almost infinitely, because there was an almost infinite supply of money looking for an investment. So you could do infinite deficit financing because the bond market was so hungry. That's ending now.
Interesting.
That is ending now as the baby boomers are now going to start cashing in all of those bonds. They're going to start cashing in all of those investments. We're headed for a credit crunch. We will not be able to rely on quantitative easing. We will not be able to rely on deficit financing in the way we have for the last 40 years. And we don't really know how to do it any other way. There is nobody still working in the finance departments of the Western world who was employed in 1961. We have no living memory of how things were done before the age of easy credit. We're going to have, just like we have no living memory of how we fought Spanish influenza. So when we did it with COVID, we made it up as we went along for better or for worse. Well, we're going to be doing the same thing with finances and budgets. We're going to be making it up as we go along, for better or for worse. And it's going to be even more difficult because we're going to have this smaller population base to pay for it. In 1955, we always knew that there was going to be a bigger generation. There was going to be more people coming up the pipe than there were going down. So we always had that new generation hitting their 30s that was going to be high consumption, who are going to be able to kickstart our economy with their higher consumptive levels. Well, we're going to have fewer 30-year-olds every year than we did before. We won't be able to consume our way out of this problem.
You know, it's episodes like this to make me glad we did the things I'm happy about episode.
my doom and gloom. It's going to be a challenge, man. It's going to, and we have no template for what we're doing on this. This is a new problem. Like, humanity hasn't dealt with this before.
Yeah, ever, right? Like,
ever.
It's every prior to the baby boomers,
yep.
Every subsequent generation
has
bigger
always
than the
been
one.
bigger than the previous one.
Yeah.
Until Gen X.
Which is why when they developed or modeled their welfare systems the way they did, it kind of made sense because every generation was bigger, so they always thought it was going to be a bigger and bigger pool of workers to support the welfare. And that turned out to not to be the case.
And then when it reverses, now it's a Ponzi scheme.
Yep.
So it's going to be a huge problem. And, you know, we can look to Japan and we can look to South Korea. And what's really relevant for the Koreans and the Japanese is, how does this affect conscription? How does this affect your ability to run national defense?
Yeah, it's a big problem.
You know, huge problem. Something a lot of international observers talk about a lot is that this is Ukraine and Russia's last war. No matter who wins, this is their last war. Because demographically, both of those countries are in free fall. And that Russia in particular is never going to recover.
Yeah, Russia's worse off than I think Ukraine is.
Yeah,
but
Russia will never recover from this demographically because
Russia was already lost because of the lost generation in the 90s.
Already lost, yeah. But now it's even worse.
What happened in the 90s?
Well, just their birth rates plummeted.
Their birth rate, because they lost a generation of men essentially in the 90s after the Soviet Union collapsed, and they couldn't pay anybody.
Nobody had kids.
Well, that and like the Russian life expectancy dropped.
Deaths of despair.
It dropped like 10 years based solely on deaths of despair of military-age males in the 90s. Like, it was so many. That's why like the Russian bride thing became a meme, because there were just like women vastly outnumbered men in Russia because the Russian men were just dropping like flies, mostly through deaths of despair.
Which still has not reversed.
No, but so they lost an entire generation of reproduction just because. Yeah.
And they are now losing these men 19 to 25 in droves, you are expecting to father the next generation of children.
Yeah, and they're murdering them in Ukraine.
Yeah, by the hundreds of thousands. So this is the end of the road for Russia. They've already lost this war. But again, when we look at what Japan is hoping that they can use automation to try and, for example, offset some of the labor burden of the service industry. Mm-hmm. can they replace the service industry with automation? How much of the service industry can they automate so then available workers are there for things that cannot be automated? South Korea, I guess, is looking at similar ideas. So yeah, we can look to those two countries because they are 15 to 20 years ahead of us.
So here's a question. Because we talked earlier about, okay, how do we reassign?
Yep.
Where do we take our labor pool and how do we reassign them places? So using the automation as the example and the concept that we were talking about, how our ratio of workers to dependents is going to hit
Unsustainable levels.
right. So you use the example of automation. So where do we target the automation? Right?
That's hard to do because people are going to do that on their own, right? Like wherever however,
the market is best able to figure that out.
Yeah, we can say we're going to target our automation. Like say we as the government, we figure we want to find a way to ease the burden of say seniors care. Like say where the Japanese are looking. So we will use the power of the tax dollars to make grants to, say, large universities, to their engineering and technical apparati, to say, we would like you to do some research on caregiving robots. How can we use them, say, in seniors care and in medical care, so that we can have automated robot caregivers that will ease, say, some of the burden.
Is that part of the
nursing.
dependence we were talking about earlier?
Sure. Yeah. Like I don't have any. Like I'm kind of imagining here, but that is something that the Japanese
Because it seems to me
on.
that because if automation is a potential solution,
Yeah.
and lack, the ratio of dependence to workers, is the problem.
Yeah.
Right. Then we can start looking at what are the dependent needs? What can be automated?
Yep.
And then how
And what can be achieved?
And then how do we adapt the worker pool to between them achieve the ratio that we need?
So this is something the Japanese are looking at, and they're putting a lot of money into that kind of research for robotics. And let's say, Canada, let's say we were to do the same thing. And so, we plug all that money into a couple like really major universities who are really high powered in their, computer science and their engineering faculties to try and, build us a robot for those two industries, senior care and hospitals. There is absolutely nothing stopping somebody else from using that exact same technology and adapting it to an industry where we didn't anticipate it. To wit, the recent writer's strike, where ChatGPT has threatened to make basically artists obsolete. Right now, not right now, 10 years ago, record company executives could make hundreds of thousands of dollars if they had a special and unique talent to recognize the next number one hit. And there were certain people who had that innate ability to know, that's the sound we want. This artist is going to go places this guy won't. This band is going to go platinum. This band won't. They had that unique, intangible ability to spot talent and identify sound. And they worked in film, they worked in music, but let's just specify music. Now, AI does that. AI, you plug in, say, I like this song by the Rambling Cretins, and I want to hear that. Then Spotify or Apple Music, any one of those, can mathematically analyze that song with their algorithm and say, you're probably going to like this, and this too.
They already do that.
They already do that now.
Right? Spotify generates 6 playlists a day for me.
That record company executive is now obsolete. We don't need him and his $250,000 salary or his $2 million salary.
Maybe we do, but we'll never know it.
Why are you paying for him? If we're a record label, we're not paying for that guy.
Now we're getting into intangibles, but
But this is what I mean.
So
that the AI is disrupting right now, today. It is disrupting industries. 10 years ago, when the only thing we were talking about was, okay, we're going to automate truck drivers. We're going to automate gardeners. We're going to automate like lower end blue collar unskilled positions. And now we're finding out that those are way harder to automate than we ever imagined. But the higher end creatives, the artists, the white collar professionals, like the accountants, the certified professional accountant, is way easier to automate. The lawyer can be automated. They already have software that can do that. Hollywood writers, director, actors. Now we can eliminate all of these things with AI or with technology, and the hue and the cry coming out of these guys.
See, now we're getting some philosophical territory.
Sure.
Here, right?
And major disruption.
In answer to your question, do we need the
record company
company exec? So it's impossible to prove a negative, right?
Okay.
But what I would hold up as kind of a discussion point to do with that, right, is how do you tell a generation that listens to its music song by song as it desires it?
Yep.
That there is an innate value to listening to side 2 of Abbey Road start to finish.
You can't.
Right? And that's why I'm saying, right? Is there value to a record executive? We don't know, because we don't know innately what that record executive would have found for us.
You can find that value, but you cannot impose that upon someone else. They have to discover it for their own, man. In the same way that I cannot tell anyone. I can talk till I'm blue in the face to a 13-year-old boy I know who loves hip-hop and he loves rap. I can talk to him until I'm out of breath of the beauty of Bach and Toccato and Fugue in D minor. But no, he's got to discover that for himself. That cannot be transmitted. That cannot be imposed.
But by exposing him to the name of it.
Sure.
You planted the seed. So now you are the record exec.
Thanks, buddy. And he just carries on. He goes back to Spotify. Not interested. And the other thing is, I don't just have to get him to listen to the music. I got to get him to pay for it. I need him to part with some money, because that's how I get my salary.
Yeah.
Is by 25 million people all chipping in a buck.
That's why I'm saying,
listen to that.
At this point, this is purely an academic philosophical conversation, right? Because to me, there is a value to that record exec, to not having something just spit out a list of songs that I don't know, man. Like. Right?
I think AI can do that better than the record executive. I mean, it's not that we don't have the record executive. We do.
No,
it's just that it's done by a computer.
Yeah,
not
so
a human.
There's no artistic value there, right? It's doing what.
Sure there is.
It's feeding.
Sure there is.
All it's doing is.
Sure it's artistic value.
I, for one, would love to apologize to our robot overlords. For Trent's lack of sympathy to their point of view and their artistic vision.
Artistic.
It's
plenty artistic. Okay. It's just done in a way that is non-traditional.
Our AI robotic overlords are bullshit, right? I've been working with Chat GPT, and it is fascinating.
Sure.
But it spews out trash, right?
For now.
Yeah, for now.
For now.
Right? Okay. When they're not bullshit, they can come talk to me and find me.
Well, yeah.
I'm sure they already know where I live. But
okay, Steve, automobile guy, 1962. What did they say about automatic transmissions?
What did who say about automatic?
Did anybody ever say that the automatic transmission will someday supplant the manual? That the automatic will be faster than the manual? In 1965, did anyone ever say this?
Salesman did, for sure.
In the race car
remember in the 60s
how many
and the 50s.
automatic transmissions were in, say, at Le Mans in the 1960s?
Zero.
Zero.
Well, no, I shouldn't say that. The Chaparrals had 2 speeds autos, but
you know what I mean.
But yeah,
you know
basically
what I mean.
zero.
The automatic transmission was functional for the passenger car.
Yeah.
But a real performance automobile, and I'm going to add something. Not only was the manual transmission still like the human being shifting that automobile, not only was it superior to the automatic transmission, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah. Still is, by the way.
Still is.
Yeah.
There was
there's like the movement to save the manuals now.
Because nobody wants them.
Yeah, except for enthusiasts. So.
Except for a very, very, very narrow band of enthusiasts. But, all through the 60s and 70s and right up into the 80s, right? Like it was, there was something really enjoyable about a manual. But now, stop and go traffic, manual's a pain in the ass.
Only on a hill.
Pain in the ass when you're going like, okay, red light, and then I'm going to go 40 feet, and then I stop at another light, and then I go another 40 feet, and then I go stop again. Yeah, manual can be a bit of a pain in the ass.
I'll still take it over the car that actually shuts itself off when it's in an intersection.
Yeah.
Starts.
Yeah.
You can turn that feature off.
With
some effort. Yeah.
People aren't, and every car in that line is going through that half second of extra waiting.
But hey, you're the guy who subscribes to catastrophic anthropogenic global warming, buddy. Can't have the omelet without breaking the eggs. You cannot achieve those environmental goals without a massive level of sacrifice. And just if you're shaving off a half second for every car, that's a pretty small, like even for me, dude, that's a small price to pay. Like I got my thoughts on global warming, and I got zero problems with that. In fact, I think that's cool. Like you're saving fuel. Mm-hmm. We're reducing, like to me, emissions that really count, like nitrous oxide. Well, no, those are pretty much gone. But say soot particulates, right? Like all of the real pollution of automobile exhaust, we're definitely reducing by eliminating idle, right? So
here's something I heard.
I got no problem.
You just made me think of something. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that conversation right now.
Correct.
So on Quarks and CBC, Quarks and Quarks.
Yeah.
Right. You ever listen to that?
Yeah.
Occasionally,
Okay.
yeah. When I had no other choice.
Apparently, they've been doing studies for a while, and the reduction of sulfurs in the emissions of ships at sea has resulted in the heating up of the oceans. Because the sulfur particles were not there for droplets to form around to create clouds to stop the sun from heating up the ocean.
Oh.
And
so now we're going back to high sulfur diesel? Because when I got back from Iraq in 2006, my first job was hauling fuel.
Yeah.
And one of the things they told us is like, okay, well, if you got, because the new fuels, ultra low sulfur diesels were just coming in.
Yep.
So it would be, you could bring low sulfur diesel or ultra low sulfur diesel. Yep. And you had to be very careful because even if you didn't drain your manifold completely of the regular low sulfur diesel, it would contaminate the entire
ultra low sulfur diesel.
Of ultra low sulfur.
Wow.
So it was,
Wow, that's
so you're talking,
think of the ratio, yeah.
Yeah, because you're talking like one compartment on a Super B would be like 15,000 liters, right? Yeah. And the manifold doesn't even hold 20.
Yeah, so, yet it will completely
contaminate.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
that says something about how little sulfur is in the ultra low sulfur diesel.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, I changed the topic there.
Yeah,
only semi-deliberately.
Yes. But whatever. We were talking about we were talking about manual transmissions. Yeah. My point on the whole thing was, when automatics first came out, they were minimally functional.
Yeah.
But now they completely surpass manuals. There is nothing other than a personal kind of enjoyment. Yeah. There is nothing that a manual does better than an automatic. In the same way that there is absolutely nothing in terms of audible quality that LP does better than digital music, except that some people just like the feel, like the sound of an LP.
Yeah, they basically like the noise.
They like the noise,
right? Like the extra stuff that's not music.
The pops,
the stuff in the LP that's not music is what they like.
The automatic transmission is the work of the devil and has led to a lazy and uninspired fucking generation of kids.
I will not argue the point, but like
I confess, I had not thought of it that way.
My car has a dual clutch transmission, so it's an automated manual. But the work truck is still a manual 10-speed, and I have to do the work of five normal people pushing in that clutch.
When I was a kid, I had to look over my shoulder to see if there's anyone next to me.
No, but it's like automatics are taking over the trucking industry now, and they're not actually. And I'm actually car nerd guys coming in here, but so the automatics that are winning are not the automatics of the 1960s, even though those types of automatics still exist, right? Because this is what we call the slush box. It's a planetary, hydraulically driven transmission, right? That transmission still exists, but the automatics that are really taking over are actually automated manual transmissions.
Sure.
And in the trucking industry, is literally what they are. It is the same transmission in an automatic truck as I have in my truck, but it's shifted by a computer instead of by the driver.
Yeah. And again, it's just the evolution of the improvement of the technology.
So the manual is still better. It's just that the computer brain shifting it.
Does it? Yeah, the computer can do it better than you can do it. Yeah. So ChatGPT might be creating absolute garbage, or like it's just not artistically equal to the best humans. In the same way that 20 years ago, Deep Blue just was not strategically equal to the best chess players. Now, there is no human chess player in the world who can beat AI. They just can't.
Oh, and that's a trend that's been going on for quite a while.
And we're going to see the same thing with art.
Like even in the mechanization, right? Like you remember the song John Henry? He's like a steel driving man, basically he was the guy who broke rocks for a living in the song, right? Yeah. And so some guy brings in a steam shovel, right? And so John Henry competes against the steam shovel to try and break these rocks, and it's like, okay, so the man can beat the steam shovel, but that guy who is like the best guy in the world can do it, and he can do it once, but the steam shovel can do it for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, all the time.
All the time. And we can bring in a new steam shovel every day. Yeah. We cannot bring in a new John Henry.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
So it's only a matter of time before AI makes better music, writes better novels,
makes better movies.
No, I'm going to call bullshit on that, because
matter of time.
Art is purely subjective anyways.
Sure.
Right? And even the stuff that people write,
sure,
there's some of it's shit, some of it's better than shit.
Yeah.
Right? So
when you turn on the radio, you're only hearing the best of the best.
When AI starts generating movie scripts and they start making movies out of it, right? They're gonna get what they get, right? And people are going to accept it because it's going to be based on algorithms. This is what people like. This is what people want.
Okay. Right? How much does it cost for AI to churn out one of those scripts?
I'm just
no. Answer the question. How much does it cost?
It costs nothing.
How much does it cost for you to write a script?
I don't know, because I've never been paid for one.
Well, let's think about it. You're going to need X number of days to do it.
Okay.
You have to be fed through those days.
Okay.
You need a house in which to hold you while you do that.
Here's the deal.
AI needs a second and has no inputs.
Patty, I want $100,000 for my script, but I'll invest it in your nursing home.
Okay, there you go.
I don't know.
His nursing home for adolescents.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is
my full service apartment.
What I'm saying is what gets lost in there is the intrinsic value or not of whatever product was put out there. If it's based on algorithms saying this is what people like,
this
for
is what
art,
people like,
right? Then this is what they like. But you're feeding them pap,
maybe,
right? You're giving them. Well, you're giving them crack cocaine because that's what they want.
Let me give you this analogy.
What they need is heroin.
There will always be creatives and artists. There will always be. In the same way that when I buy a suit off the rack at Moore's, it's made mass produced. It's a nice suit. However, it is made off the rack or mass produced, but in a largely automated process where it just churns them out. And it knows what to buy, or it knows what that Moore's factories know what to make because they have this massive amount of data of what people prefer. Okay, fine. But there is still the market for that handmade bespoke suit where you go rolling up to Sam Abu Hassan and that one guy makes you a suit by hand. Now, I needed, Steve's getting married next week. Holy cats, we need a suit. Okay, let's go down.
Married next week?
Yeah, yes. He doesn't know it yet. But
One of those Russian brides?
yes. And so, okay, geez, Trent, we need a suit. We go down to Moore's. We get a suit today. We get a suit today. We go to Sam Abu Hassan. Sorry, boys. I'll get you your suit in a month and a half. Okay, fine. We're willing to wait that because there is something about that hand.
And that's exactly what I'm talking. That's exactly what.
Those artists will always be around, but just like tailors, just like handmade furniture, just like a blacksmith, all of these things that were once done in the realm of what we considered, yes, they were tools, yes, they were functional items, but they kind of straddled that line for what we thought of art. Yeah, art being the number one, being the operative form. Yeah. They transcended merely functional to the beautiful, to the artistic.
And so my point is...
let me just close.
Yeah.
They will still be around, but like those other forms, in a far reduced and specialized form that is only for the richest of the rich.
I get it. And I agree with you. And that's because it's a tragedy, right? It's because people don't value it as much, right? And so...
What's wrong? How's that a tragedy?
This come from the guy whose rap monster couldn't deal with Bach?
If it doesn't meet his needs, yet rap does, that's not a tragedy. If that music speaks to him,
I'm saying society loses. Society loses.
I don't think it does.
It is lost.
It's lost.
Quit focusing on the collective.
I don't think it does. It just changes.
The individuals within society lose.
Someday, like I'll be able to go to your book stand. And again, that's another one. Books are like digital. You have your Kindle and whatnot.
Nope.
But to me, there is a joy.
It is an entirely visceral process to hold a book, read it is not the same.
To feel
it is literally artificial seeing it on a screen.
The paper in your hands, the feel of a spine of a book. Yeah, there's something to that. There will always be printed books for that reason. Now, will they be as common as they were 40 years ago? No, of course not. This digital Kindle kind of type format will dominate, no question about it, but they will always be around. And the cost of those books will probably go up simply because you're not paying for the content now, you're paying
for the medium.
More for the medium because you enjoy that kind of medium. Now, I'll be able, like say 30, 40 years from now, I'll be able to walk into someone's house and look at their personal library and say, yeah, they still have books because they enjoy the books. But there will be a small section of their library that they doubly treasure. And I'll say, what's it about these books that you really love, that you put in this pride of place? And I'll say, they're all naturally written. All these other books, and I enjoyed them, I loved them, they were thoroughly entertaining, they're AI written. I loved them, they were great stories, loved them, fantastic, read them all the time, I thoroughly enjoy them. But these ones over here in this separate shelf, those are written by people. I think we will see that day. Hands down. It will come.
Are we about done? I'm getting depressed.
I'm good.
I have one more question.
I will defer to Trent if I don't like the way it's shaping up.
Do you think there's a floor?
I don't know. My logical mind tells me there has to be.
Yeah.
But really, I don't know.
I don't know what it looks like, but I think there's got to be a floor. I think there's like a minimum.
Why?
Because there's going to be.
Just because we can't conceive of it doesn't mean that it.
I feel like
happen.
there's just like a minimum number of people who want kids.
Sure.
right? And the drive,
But is
the
it
drive
enough
exists.
to sustain a nation? Like
Maybe not.
say the Japanese nation.
Maybe not. Maybe like imagine say the Indonesian archipelago. All those islands become independent nation states just because Indonesia can't. The population bomb hits or depopulation bomb hits. So now all those islands are separate entities, and and the populations that are in thousands or tens of thousands go down to hundreds or whatever.
There are lots of YouTube videos about, say, ghost towns of southern Saskatchewan, ghost towns of southern Alberta, ghost towns of Manitoba. And they were once thriving communities.
Yeah.
But they just had fewer and fewer kids, and people left, didn't come back.
Yeah, well, urbanization was the big driver of that,
Take
right?
out migration, and it still would have happened.
Yeah.
There's just not enough. More people died than were born. Like, even if you walled off that town so that people couldn't leave, it still would have died out. So if it can happen to a town, and we eminently understand that, then how can we say that it just can't happen to a nation?
Or a globe. I think you're right.
I'm not saying it's impossible that we just stop having kids, but I imagine
you're right. Some people
there's got to be a floor, I think, of just people who want kids,
there
right?
has to be.
Because we have a birth rate now.
Yeah.
But there's no defining it.
Yeah. And that floor, whatever it is, may not be enough to preserve certain cultures.
Sure.
And we may come to a day where, say, the Italian people no longer exist. And I'm not picking on them. I'm just going to pick one.
Yeah.
In that, they reached their floor where, there was that, the demographic chart became a pencil, where there were enough people who wanted to have kids, and they passed on those values to people who had kids. So, there was that certain amount of people. But they were so small that they became assimilated into another group.
Yeah.
And so what is left of them, say by 2150, they don't speak Italian anymore. Maybe their last names are Di Giuseppe or Cannavale or something that Ceppe or something that sounds Italian.
But it'll be hyphenated with a German one or something.
Maybe, or French or
Slovenian or
something. But they don't speak Italian anymore.
Yeah,
they don't speak Italian, and they don't have the cultural practices that we maybe say associate with contemporary Italy.
Yeah,
I can definitely see that happening, and to a lot of places,
including this one.
Yeah, including this one. Yeah. Especially Canada.
Because their population density is so low.
Because we are replacing ourselves with other cultures.
Yeah.
We're bringing in 1 million people a year who are not Canadians.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of and it's not guaranteed. What's faster? The power of immigration, the power of aging versus the power of assimilation.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to have any kids.
No.
But you still have considerable assimilative ability.
Right.
Right? You may not have a child of your own, but you could definitely say, if you were a coach or say you worked in a community where you're working with immigrant kids, and you unknowingly you're doing this through your volunteer work, and you're on the side of the angels, but what you're doing has an assimilative effect that takes this kid from Africa and this other kid from Sri Lanka and this other kid from Brazil and influences them to the point where their identity by their adult lives is not resemblant of Brazilian, Sri Lankan, or Nigerian culture, and is something that is uniquely Canadian. So how fast do each of these things work? We're going to find out.
All right.
Okay.
And there we go. And so on that cheery note.
Hey,
right.
did we welcome any new listeners? We welcomed Belgium last time.
Sorry.
Before we go, I just want to acknowledge
click over to the analytics, please.
Nope. No, we didn't.
Sorry. Back to the overview. Audience, sorry.
Nope.
No, not really.
Nobody.
I don't remember France being on there last week.
France. Is that new?
Lebanon.
Well, Lebanon's been there for a while.
Lebanon and Netherlands have been there for a while.
I'm thinking VPN there.
Probably. But welcome to our French listener.
Trent?
Merci beaucoup.
Okay.
Considering how much we talk about the Spanish Civil War in this podcast, how come there's nobody from Spain?
You'd think. Well, we haven't really leapt
We
into
didn't
that.
talk about Spanish Civil War on this podcast.
We haven't
on the
dedicated an
podcast
episode
in
yet.
general.
Yeah, we haven't focused on it, but we mention it like every second episode.
Yeah, we should do an episode on that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I got, guys.
All right.
Right.
Ciao.
Thanks,
Cheers.
everybody.